my name actually is Sophie Gebreyes, but everybody calls me Sophie. And I'm the country representative for the Lutheran World Federation here in Ethiopia. And I'm reaching out to you this afternoon from Addis Ababa. It's about 8 o'clock. Well, now it's 8:20 p.m. in the evening on Thursday evening. I live and work in Addis Ababa, and today I'm taking time to reflect on the situation in the country, its impact on the affected populations, and the work that we do is the support of people like you. Thank you for the invitation, Suzanne, and for everyone here. It's really, truly an honor. I'm happy about this fellowship and also for the opportunity to pray together. My bandwidth is not that strong, so I'm gonna, turn off the camera and I'll continue just with voice only. For those who are not familiar with Ethiopia, it's a country located in the Horn of Africa, and Addis Ababa is the capital city. The country is divided in 10 regions, and the Lutheran World Federation, or LWF, works in 5 of them. Today, Ethiopia has an estimated population of about 120 million. It has one of the fastest growing populations in the world. And to put that in perspective, when I was in high school, when I was like 17 or 18, the population was 27 million. So I'm now 54, and it has more than quadrupled. So you can see how fast the population is growing. And Ethiopia is a very ancient country, steeped in rich history, country that had been mentioned around 51 times in the Holy Bible. Christianity reached Ethiopia around the 4th century Anno Domini, and Christianity, and especially the Orthodox religion, is still the dominant religion in the country. As you may be aware, in most of the other African countries, Christianity came much, much later during colonization in the late 1900s, which led the previous president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, to say, when the missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. And they taught us to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. And one other unique characteristic of Ethiopia is that it's the only country in Africa, actually, that has never been colonized. And it is said that Ethiopia has a long tradition of hospitality to forced migrants, dating back to the 7th century AD, when the Ethiopian king, Nagashi, provided sanctuary to Muslim converts facing, persecution in Mecca, Medina. Since then, the Muslim population in Ethiopia has steadily grown to today represent 34% of the total population. While Ethiopia has always been a country of origin and destination of migrants and refugees, it had never hosted so many internally displaced peoples, or IDPs in short, until 2018, when large and violent intercommunal conflicts started to erupt across the country. Before then, Ethiopia, especially since the late 1990s and until the Nobel Peace Prize era, was known as an island of stability in an ocean of volatility. As you may be aware, the Nobel Peace Prize was bestowed upon the Ethiopian Prime Minister in 2019, an occasion that ushered in a short-lived era of unbridled optimism, but quickly dashed with the proliferation of unprecedented and violent intercommunal conflicts. According to the International Displacement Monitoring Center report, Ethiopia, just like 2018, earned the unenviable accolade of the country with the highest number of IDPs, with over 5.1 million in 2021. It is also one of the largest refugee hosting nations in the world and the 3rd largest in Africa. In addition, in 2022, the country is grappling with one of the most severe droughts ever recorded in its history. This means the current situation is even worse than the famines of biblical proportions that Ethiopia became synonymous with in the 1970s and the 1980s. The Lutheran World Federation works across the country in both predominantly Christian and predominantly Muslim regions of the country. However, the current northern Ethiopia crisis has disproportionately hit the Christian highlands, the northern historic route, as it's often referred to, in Tigray, where Christianity came to Ethiopia through the 9 saints in the 4th century, and in Lasta Lalibela, where another king, King Lalibela, founded the New Jerusalem, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with 11 rock-hewn churches. The ancient churches and heritage sites and other jewels of Ethiopia came too close to being destroyed by the folly of men. As a humanitarian worker and the country representative of the Lutheran World Federation, I often travel to the field to witness the plight of the IDPs, especially to assess the impact of forced displacement on women and children, as well as to ensure that the funds that you so generously pledge is reaching the intended people. The thing that strikes me the most is the number of mothers with babies and toddlers in bag carriers. Once a mother told me how her family had fled from the troubles when the troubles began. With 4 children, they made a 512 kilometers journey with Nagesti 8 months pregnant. The hardship of the journey meant she gave birth prematurely on the road. Somehow, through God's grace, her baby survived. Though when I met them, Nagesti told me that she had no breast milk for her baby as she had no food to eat. The family were only alive because of the generosity of the local churches, and now because of the support of people like you and PWRDF. Again and again, I see that children are innocent and forgotten victims of war. They have been exposed to the brutalities of armed conflict, faced starvation, been parched from thirst, and forced to flee multiple times. And despite the trauma that they have suffered, somehow the children are resilient. They bring smiles and fun and joy, even though there is tragedy unfolding all around them. That's the hope I hold on to as we work here in the hardest of places where we feel so isolated and left behind by the world. Lutheran World Federation is working in both Tigray and Amhara in humanitarian assistance. We prioritize pregnant women, lactating mothers, children, the elderly, and people with different abilities in the beneficiary selection process for humanitarian assistance with the support of ACT Alliance, members like PWRDF. PWRDF supports Lutheran World Federation's programming in protection and water, hygiene and sanitation, or WASH, in Mekelle, the capital of Tigray region, which hosts hundreds of thousands of internally displaced people from various parts of Tigray. Almost 2 years on, the needs remain great due to the de facto blockade imposed on Tigray. Under this de facto blockade, the people of Tigray are held hostage with the land borders and airspace closed, with no communications, including telephone and internet, no electricity, no banking service, and no fuel. The conflict shows no signs of abating, and thus the restoration of essential services remains elusive. Faith, history, and legend have been part and parcel of the making of Ethiopia, where its mosaic of peoples and all 3 Abrahamic religions have coexisted in harmony for centuries. It is heartbreaking to see Ethiopia on the verge of fragmentation along ethnic and religious lines, especially over the last 3 to 4 years. We often wonder why, like Jerusalem, its pious and faithful people are being subjected to such violence. And to console ourselves, and as Christians, we say that God tests the faithful and take comfort in Bible verses like, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crowns of life, which has promised for those who love him." That is precisely why I think that people living under such horrendous social, economic, and political context do not rise up. In any other country, this would have been ripe for a violent revolution. I would like to end with an anecdote which reminds me that at times a bright star twinkles in the dark sky to remind us that all is not lost. Back in the early 2021, when humanitarian actors were overwhelmed with the massive influx of IDPs into Mekelle, Lutheran World Federation was distributing non-food items or NFIs in Ethio-China Friendship School, one of the many schools where the Lutheran World Federation was intervening. At the time, all the schools and colleges in Mekelle were converted into makeshift IDP camps to cope with the influx. During the distribution, I could see the camp was well organized. Then there was no need for crowd control, which is often the case. And I asked who the volunteer camp manager was, and they told me that he was an IDP named C.A. Jonas. Right then and then, I knew that I needed him on my Mekelle team. In such responses, we have what we call community development facilitators, or CDFs, preferably people who speak the local language, and if possible, people drawn from the same community. So soon afterwards, Lutheran World Federation hired him, and CA became a CDF and started earning a small salary. As we say in Ethiopia, good luck comes in threes. And shortly after, his wife Asqual got a job at the International Organization for Migration, or IOM, as a midwife in a mobile health clinic. A few months later, I went back to Mekelle, and Asqual and Sia presented me with their newborn son. They named Luther, as Sia's fortunes started to turn with the Lutheran World Federation. Thank you.